Okay, we're back from the break, and Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
And
how we doing with the cold? This polar, what do they call it? Polar vortex.
Yeah, it's pretty damn chilly out there.
Yeah, it was 20 degrees this morning here and 21 degrees below zero in Minnesota, so we don't have it too bad.
40 degrees difference. Well, getting back to that diabetes question that Ray had, so, keeping your average blood sugar at that average around 6 will prevent the microvascular complications of diabetes. And the only way you're going to be able to do that if you're diabetic is have a low glycemic index food, exercising after you eat, and really, really, really trying to watch what you eat. There are a lot of good products out there to help treat diabetes today, and we can go into that at a later date. But the macrovascular events, if your blood sugar is greater than 7, then you're going to succumb to the microvascular and macrovascular events. And what I just said was, as your sugar goes higher, your cholesterol changes into smaller particles. I used this analogy of quite a few shows ago, but think of your arteries as freeways, and think of the lipoproteins that carry cholesterol as cars that carry people. So when we check your cholesterol, we just check the passengers in the cars. We do not check the lipoproteins. We don't know how big. We don't know how many they are. So we're just looking at that. If you're going through the toll booth, it's counting passengers. It's not counting. And cholesterol does not free float in your body like people do not transverse the freeway without being in a car. So when you are a normal person, non-diabetic, your cholesterol could be carried around in buses. The freeway isn't very crowded. They're big particles. They carry a lot of people, and they don't wreck because the freeways are empty. Now, starting to become a diabetic, and now you're carrying all those same passengers in Fiats. And the freeway is very crowded, and there's a lot of accidents, which means those cholesterol particles are bouncing into your tissues. And this is how you get cholesterol development. And then once you start getting plaque or incorporation of cholesterol into your arteries, it's Katie bar the door, because it causes inflammation. What happens is that lipid in that plaque oxidizes, okay? And when it oxidizes, it causes inflammation. And when you get inflammation, you get scarring, right? You know that. And the scar tissue is the calcium that becomes deposited, and that causes hardening of the arteries. So that's what that is about. Ray, you're calling back. Good.
I'm calling back because you confused me a little bit on that diabetes. First, you said from 95 to 140, and then you went down to 130, means you're pre-diabetic. Then you went into 5, 6, and 7, and I have no idea what the difference or reference was.
That's the index.
If you could explain that, I'd appreciate it, and I'll keep another question for later in the show.
Okay. So the one is a fasting blood sugar, which is when you basically wake up in the morning and you go to the lab and they check your sugar. If you don't get the average blood sugar, the hemoglobin A1C, that's that 5.7 number, okay? So if you there's two numbers we look at, the fasting blood sugar, which is where you're at in the morning. Theoretically, you should be at 85.
And that's how much sugar that's floating through your blood at that time?
Yeah, it tells a story about insulin resistance. It tells a story about how your body's handling the sugar. So if you're fasting in the morning and your sugar is 80, 85, that's normal, okay? If you're fasting in the morning and your sugar is 95, your body is having a hard time controlling its sugar, right? I mean, you're making insulin, but it's not really working well because you're obese, or because you don't make a lot of insulin, or because you're obese and you're having to make too much. So if you're thin and you're a diabetic, I guarantee you're on the pancreatic poop outside, okay? Your beta cells aren't making enough insulin, and you basically have no way of making fat, so you're thin because you don't make a lot of insulin, and your sugars are high. If you're obese and your sugar is 95, I know you make a lot of insulin, and I know you're gonna become a diabetic unless you lose weight and change your diet, okay? So, I hope that clears it up. There's two tests, Ray: average blood sugar, hemoglobin A1C, which is a 6-week blood sugar. The reason it's called hemoglobin A1C is because sugar deposits onto the red blood cell. So it goes up and down, and every time it goes high, it sticks a sugar molecule in the red blood cell. And then your fasting blood sugar is just your serum glucose, or the glucose we check when we draw off your blood and spin it down. And if that isn't clear, call me back and I'll try to explain it another way.
Make an appointment, come in.
Yeah.
Hey, Chuck.
That's a good one. Hey, I got a question about lipid tests, blood tests. I used to have Dr. Van Wagner, who left, and she had ordered a lipid test for me. And lo and behold, I get a bill from Quest, and to make a long story short, she never justified a lipid test, even though I got the worst heart in the world. So, I've gone through the ringer trying to get Mountain Valley Physicians Group to contact Quest and send justification for it. And they simply won't do it, it appears. I don't know why not. But at any rate, can you explain what the lipid test reveals about your heart, so that maybe I got some kind of foundation?
Do you know what do you know what the numbers were that you got?
Huh?
Do you know what the numbers were? Do you have your lab?
No, she left. She was gone like in a week.
Oh, wow.
She ordered the test,
Sounds
and
like our
then,
attorneys.
bam, she was out the door. I did ask her to I asked the Mountain Valley Physicians Group to send you all the data.
They won't do that unless you come in and fill out a request.
I did.
Oh, really? Well, then we should probably have it eventually. I don't know. What happens when a practice closes like that is there's somebody that becomes the custodian of the records, and I don't know who that is, but legitimately, if you don't get your records in 30 days, that's a state board question. You call up the medical board, and they will send a letter to Mountain Valley Group saying you have 30 days to release Chuck's records or you violate the Medical Practice Act. So if they're not giving them to you and we haven't received them and they're stalling you, they can't do that legally. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we can usually get them from Quest. We just have to call them up and have them send them to us. We send the requisition slip over there and we get them done. So, cholesterol really doesn't say anything about your heart. It says a lot about the risk you have of developing heart disease. And there's a lot of factors other than just cholesterol, but it is a major factor in that, because I've seen people all over the spectrum that have really high cholesterols that never develop heart disease, and people that have decent cholesterols and develop heart disease. So it's a multifactorial type of thing: your family history, your smoking history, your stress level, and a lot of other things go into development of heart disease, not just your cholesterol. But that being said, a little bit of fire, meaning, having a bad cholesterol, poor exercise, smoking, doing things that are wrong, it's juggling those things, and sooner or later you're going to have an accident, and that's going to cause you some problems with regards to heart disease. So.
Okay, so lipid test basically is purely cholesterol.
Well, you get a total cholesterol, and then they break it down from total cholesterol to HDL, which is your good cholesterol. And when I say HDL, that's a lipoprotein. When I talked about proteins that carry your cholesterol, so there's lipoprotein, and then there's LDL, which is the bad cholesterol. And then there's triglycerides, which is a free fatty acid in your blood, kind of. So you have total cholesterol, HDL, and LDL, and there's some other components, VLDLs, but they really don't make any difference. So those are the three basic things, total, triglycerides, HDL, LDL, and from that we can assess your cholesterol risk for certain diseases based on that.
Gotcha, great. Okay, in parting, I just want to say, I think Trump's nominee for Secretary of the Navy or Army today was the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Who was it, Chuck?
I don't know his name, but he was the manager of a hedge fund.
Oh.
And he owned some football team, I think,
he was
in
the
Florida.
hockey team owner.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to me, to get these politicians and these bureaucrats out of these positions is the best thing anyone can do.
I know. Hold on, we got to go to break, but hang on to that thought. We'll be right back. Okay.